I never thought I'd be that guy, the one sitting alone at a computer, typing out his life for strangers on Reddit, asking if he's crazy or if his wife suggesting we swing is as messed up as I think it is. Is that normal now? Or is it just a fancy word for cheating? I'm still struggling to wrap my head around it. She made it sound so casual, like she was suggesting we try a new restaurant or take a weekend trip somewhere. But to me, it felt like she was lighting a match and holding it over everything we'd built together. Anyway, I guess that's why I'm here. What do you guys think? Swinging, is that just a free pass to cheat? I'll get into all of that, but first, I guess I should start from the beginning. You need to know how we got here. Her name is Lisa. When we met, she was this whirlwind of energy, like, you'd feel her walk into a room before you even saw her. She had this presence, She was never the type to sit still, always on the go, always trying something new. It was like she was afraid that if she slowed down for a second, life would pass her by. She worked as a fitness instructor back then, one of those people who seemed to live at the gym. I'm talking about 6 a.m. yoga classes, spin sessions at noon, running marathons on the weekends. And it wasn't just her job, it was who she was. She was obsessed with her body, her health, her whole image, really. You could tell she liked people looking at her. She thrived on it. Me? I'm not built like that. I'm more of a calm night-in kind of guy. I've never been one for constant motion or excitement. I like things simple. My idea of a good time is sitting on the porch with a cold beer, grilling up some steaks, watching the game, maybe hanging out with a couple of buddies now and then. I've always been the kind of guy who enjoys the quieter things in life. I don't need to be the center of attention. I don't need adrenaline rushing through my veins to feel alive. That's probably why Lisa and I worked in the beginning, or at least, I thought we did. Opposites attract, right? That's what people say, anyway. Looking back, maybe I should have seen the warning signs earlier. Lisa was always wanting more excitement, more adventure, more of something I wasn't quite sure I could give her. It started out with her pulling me into her hobbies, dragging me to yoga classes, convincing me to try hiking, even pushing me to take up cycling. I went along with it because, well, I loved her. And honestly, at the time, I thought that's what you did for someone you care about. You make compromises. You try to meet them halfway. But what I didn't realize was that with Lisa, there wasn't really a halfway. It was her way, or it was nothing. And then there were her friends. Jessica and Mandy. Jesus, those two. I don't know what it is about certain people, but you can just tell when someone's a bad influence. Jessica? She's the ringleader. Always loud, always the one with the big ideas, always pushing boundaries. You know the type, the friend who's always whispering in your partner's ear, filling their head with crap that slowly poisons everything you've built. Every time Lisa hung out with her, I could feel her changing, like she was slipping further and further away from who she used to be. Jessica loved drama, lived for it, really. And then there was Mandy. Now, Mandy was a different kind of disaster. She's one of those girls who's never happy. Always bouncing from one guy to the next, never satisfied, never staying in one place long enough to figure herself out. She'd been through more breakups in a year than I'd been in my whole life. I don't know why, but Lisa couldn't get enough of them. Every time she went out with those two, she came back different. It was like she had a head full of their bullshit, and it seeped into everything. Suddenly, the things I did for her, the things I thought made us happy, weren't enough. I wasn't exciting enough, adventurous enough, spontaneous enough. They made her feel like she deserved more, like she needed to explore, like she was missing out on something. And then came the suggestion. We were sitting at home, just a regular night. I'd had a long day at work, nothing special, and she hit me with it out of nowhere. Have you ever thought about swinging? She asked, all casual, like she was asking if I wanted to try sushi instead of pizza for dinner. I remember staring at her, trying to figure out if she was joking. But her face was serious. She wasn't messing around. She was actually talking about us, as a couple, sleeping with other people. "It's not cheating," she said, "it's just an experience." Like that was supposed to make me feel better. And that's when it hit me. Jessica and Mandy. I knew they had something to do with it. I knew they'd been feeding her this crap, making her think this was normal, making her think this was what she needed to spice things up. But for me, it felt like the end of everything. I didn't answer her right away when she brought up the whole swinging thing. How could I? It was like she dropped a grenade in the middle of our living room, and I was still waiting for it to explode. I just sat there, staring at her, trying to process what she just said. But in my head, all I could hear was one word: betrayal. She noticed I wasn't saying anything, and that's when the real trouble started. She crossed her arms, gave me that look she always did when she wasn't getting her way, and said, "What? It's not like I'm asking for something crazy. It's just an experience. It doesn't mean anything." Doesn't mean anything? That's when I lost it. Doesn't mean anything? You're talking about sleeping with other men, Lisa. How the hell is that not cheating? Her face changed. I could see it, the frustration bubbling under the surface. "God, you're so old-fashioned," she shot back, her voice dripping with annoyance. "It's not the 1950s anymore. People do this all the time. It's not betrayal. It's not like I'm sneaking around behind your back. I'm telling you up front. I want to try something different, something exciting. And I'm offering you the same in return. You can sleep with other women, too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I'd married, the one I thought I knew better than anyone, was sitting there, trying to justify this madness to me. "I don't want other women, Lisa," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, but it wasn't easy. "I'm not built like that. We're married, for God's sake. That means something to me. It's not some open-ended deal where we just mess around with other people when we get bored." She rolled her eyes, and that set me off even more. "You're so uptight," she muttered, like this was all some kind of joke. "You act like you're still living in the same world your parents did. It's not like that anymore. People aren't tied down like that. It's about experiences, about keeping things interesting." "That's not how I was raised," I snapped. "My dad, my mom, hell, your dad wouldn't go for this either." And that's when she lost it. "Oh, here we go," she practically yelled, throwing her hands up. "The Almighty Father. Just because your dad had his little, perfect marriage doesn't mean that's what we have to do. And don't even start talking about my dad like he'd back you up on this. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I shot back. "You think your dad would be okay with his daughter running around, sleeping with whoever the hell she wants? You think he raised you to be like that?" The argument escalated from there, fast. She started pacing around the room, throwing her hands in the air, telling me how backward I was, how I didn't understand modern relationships, how it was about freedom, not control. She kept going on and on about how I was holding her back, how she needed more than just this boring, conventional life. And I just sat there, feeling like I didn't even know who she was anymore. "Do you really think this is what marriage is about?" I asked, my voice quieter now, almost pleading. "You think trading me off for some random guy is going to make you happy?" She stopped pacing, finally turning to look at me. "It's not like that," she said, softer now, like she was trying to reason with me. "I'm not trading you off. I'm giving us both a chance to try something new. To explore. To not feel tied down." But the damage was already done. In my mind, it was clear, she didn't see it as betrayal. To her, this wasn't a big deal. But to me? It was everything. We didn't talk much after that. The next couple of days were quiet, too quiet. I tried to go about things like normal, but it was always there, hanging between us, this thing she wanted to do that I couldn't get behind. Every time I looked at her, all I could think about was what she'd said. That she wanted to sleep with other men. That she didn't see anything wrong with it. I didn't know how to get past that. It was like we were living in two different worlds. Her world, where this was just another experience to try, and mine, where it was the ultimate betrayal. We spent days barely speaking, just tiptoeing around each other. Every time I looked at her, I could feel the distance growing. And every time she looked at me, I could see the frustration building in her eyes, like she couldn't believe I wasn't on board with her crazy idea. But I wasn't raised like that. And I wasn't about to start living like that now. For a while there, I thought maybe things were finally settling down. After that huge argument about swinging, Lisa and I had this weird kind of peace between us. The silence broke, and slowly, we started acting more like ourselves again. It was like we were back to the way things used to be, almost like that fight had never happened. Lisa was different, though. She was warmer, friendlier, more affectionate than she'd been in a long time. I mean, for the first time in months, it felt like she actually wanted to be around me. She'd greet me with a smile when I got home, touch my arm when we talked, even curl up next to me on the couch during our old movie nights. I didn't know what to make of it. Part of me wanted to believe that maybe she'd realized how crazy her swinging idea was and decided to put it all behind us. But something didn't sit right. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on beneath the surface. You know that gut feeling? The one you try to ignore because you don't want it to be true? Yeah, that was me. I wanted to believe that everything was getting better, that maybe we'd turned a corner, but deep down, I knew something wasn't adding up. Then one day, everything fell apart. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Lisa had just come back from her usual gym session. She was in a great mood, all smiles and laughs, like nothing in the world was bothering her. But when she got home, she left her car keys on the kitchen counter and went straight to the shower. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something made me pause that day. Maybe it was the way she was acting, too happy, too relaxed, like she didn't have a care in the world. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed her car keys and walked out to the driveway. Her car was spotless, like usual. Lisa always took pride in keeping it clean. But as I glanced around the front seat, something caught my attention. It was small, almost hidden in the corner of the passenger seat. At first, I thought it was just some random wrapper or trash she forgot to throw away. But when I looked closer, my stomach dropped. It was a tube of pre-erectal dental fluid. And it wasn't unused. Now, I don't know if you've ever been hit with a moment where everything makes sense all at once, but that's exactly what happened. In an instant, everything clicked. This wasn't mine. We hadn't been together like that in weeks, not since the argument. But here it was, sitting on the passenger seat, mocking me. The whole, let's be better to each other, act she'd been pulling. The extra warmth and friendliness. It was all a smokescreen. The truth hit me like a freight train. She hadn't just stopped pushing for the swinger idea. She'd found someone else to do it with behind my back. I stood there, staring at that damn tube, feeling a mixture of rage and disgust boiling inside me. My hands were shaking, and for a second, I thought I might actually throw up. I had refused to let her screw around with other men, and what did she do? She went out and did it anyway. Only this time, she didn't even have the decency to ask for my permission. She just did it behind my back, like I was some kind of idiot. I didn't care who it was. I didn't want to know the details. All I knew was that the woman I married, the woman who had promised to be faithful to me, had already crossed the line I never thought she would. And now, it was my turn to do something about it. I stormed back inside, shoving the keys on the table and pacing around the living room, trying to figure out what the hell to do next. I knew one thing for sure: I was done. This marriage, it was over. There was no coming back from this. I wasn't going to play the fool, sitting around while she did God knows what with God knows who. The first thing I did was pick up the phone and call my lawyer. I didn't waste any time. "I need to talk about filing for divorce," I said, not bothering to sugarcoat it. He didn't ask a lot of questions, just told me to come in and talk it over, go through my options. But I wasn't going to rush things. Not just yet. Because while I knew divorce was inevitable, I also knew I wasn't going to let Lisa get away with this scot-free. She thought she could cheat on me, humiliate me, and just go on with her life like nothing happened. Hell no. I wasn't just going to end things quietly. I needed to get even. I needed her to feel the same pain, the same betrayal I was feeling right now. So, before I filed for divorce, I made a decision. I was going to take my revenge. Revenge isn't something you rush. You can't just act on your first impulse, no matter how pissed off you are. You've got to be smart about it, plan every move, make sure it cuts deep. So that's what I did. I thought about it for a while, and I came up with a plan that would make sure Lisa felt the full weight of what she'd done. The first thing I did was hire a private detective. I didn't want to be some guy snooping through her texts or trying to follow her around. No, I wanted real evidence, something undeniable, something that would leave her no room to weasel out of it. If she was going to cheat on me, I was going to catch her in the act. And not just a picture of her sneaking around, either. I wanted the full thing. Proofs. I wanted her squirming with guilt when I laid it all out in front of her. The detective I hired was a pro. We met in some low-key diner off the highway, and I laid it all out for him. "Follow her," I said. "I need video evidence. And I'm not talking about her just meeting some guy. I want the whole thing. I want to see her in bed with him. I need to see it." He didn't flinch. I guess he'd heard crazier requests in his line of work. He just nodded, asked for a few more details, where she worked, where she usually went, that sort of thing, and then got to work. I didn't ask questions. I figured the less I knew about how he was doing it, the better. It took weeks. Weeks of me waiting, wondering if she'd slip up, wondering if she was still seeing whoever it was. Every time she left the house, I'd tense up, knowing the detective was probably tailing her, waiting for the moment when she'd let her guard down. But I kept cool. I acted like nothing was wrong. I didn't let her see that I was onto her. Lisa, for her part, kept up the same routine. Acting all sweet and affectionate, like nothing had changed. She was still going out on her gym nights or meeting up with her friends, like everything was fine between us. But I knew better. Every time she smiled at me or touched my arm, all I could think about was what she was really doing when she was out. And then, one day, it happened. The detective called me. His voice was calm, professional, but I could tell there was something big. "I've got what you're looking for," he said. "Full footage. It's all there." He sent the video to me, and when I opened it, my heart sank. There it was, undeniable proof of her cheating. The video was grainy, but clear enough to see exactly what was happening. Lisa, naked, tangled up with some guy I didn't recognize in some cheap motel room. And just like that, all the doubts, all the wondering, everything was confirmed. I watched the video in silence. It wasn't even about the sex at that point. It was the betrayal, the way she'd lied to my face, pretending everything was fine while she was screwing some other guy behind my back. The whole thing made me sick. But there was also a strange sense of satisfaction. I finally had the evidence I needed. The proof. Now I could move on to the second phase of my plan. The next part? That's when things were going to get interesting. By this point, I'd already met with my lawyer and had everything lined up. Divorce papers were ready, and I made sure they said exactly what I wanted. She wouldn't get a damn thing. The house, the car, the savings, it was all staying with me. My lawyer wasn't too keen on the idea at first, but I had my leverage, and I knew how to use it. All I had to do was get her to sign. But before I went down that road, I decided I wasn't going to let her get the last word. If she could cheat on me and then play the victim, I was going to return the favor in a way that would leave her shaken to her core. I hired a girl, a professional, someone who knew exactly what I needed. It wasn't about the sex, not really. It was about the moment. I knew Lisa's schedule like clockwork. I knew exactly when she'd be coming home from her gym session. So, I timed everything perfectly. The girl showed up right on time, and we didn't waste a second. We got started, making sure it'd be loud enough for Lisa to hear the moment she walked through the door. And, sure enough, right on cue, the front door swung open. I heard her heels clacking against the floor, and then, the silence. A moment of disbelief, and then she screamed. "What the fuck is this? You son of a bitch." Her voice was shaking with rage, and I could hear her storming down the hallway, screaming like she was ready to tear the place apart. "You traitor," she yelled, her face red with fury as she stood in the doorway, watching us. I didn't stop. I wanted her to feel every bit of betrayal, every ounce of what I'd felt when I found out what she was doing behind my back. When I finally pulled away, I calmly helped the girl get dressed, handed her some cash, and walked her to the door while Lisa stood there, trembling. She was furious, but I could see something else in her eyes, shock. It wasn't what she expected. I wasn't the quiet, submissive husband she thought I'd always be. Not anymore. Once the girl left, I turned to Lisa. "How does it feel?" I asked, my voice cold. "Did you enjoy walking in on that?" Her eyes narrowed, pure confusion mixed with rage. "Are you fucking serious?" she spat, barely able to form words. "You cheat on me and then ask me how it feels? You're disgusting." I let out a small, bitter laugh. "Now you know how I felt when I found out you've been screwing around behind my back." She froze, her face going pale. She hadn't expected me to throw it back at her like that. What are you talking about?" "I haven't, don't even try it," I interrupted, cutting her off mid-lie. "I've known for weeks. I've got the proofs. So let's skip the bullshit." Her eyes widened as the reality of the situation hit her. She wasn't in control anymore. I walked over to the table, picked up the divorce papers I'd left out, and tossed them at her feet. "I want a divorce," I said flatly. "On my terms." She blinked, still trying to process what was happening, then her anger flared again. "You're delusional if you think I'm signing this," she snapped, kicking the papers. "You think you can take everything and leave me with nothing? You're out of your mind." I reached into my pocket, pulled out the flash drive, and tossed it on the table. "Take a look at what's on that," I said, crossing my arms. "Might change your mind." Lisa rushed to grab her laptop, fumbling with it as she plugged in the drive. Her eyes scanned the screen as the video played, and I watched her face twist in horror as she realized what it was. The color drained from her cheeks. There it was, her, caught red-handed in that shitty motel room, screwing some random guy while she thought I was at home, clueless. "What? How?" she stammered, barely able to form a sentence. "I had you followed," I said, my voice calm, controlled. "I've got everything. And if you don't sign those papers right now, I'll make sure that video goes public. I'll post it online, send it to everyone you know. Your friends, your family, your coworkers. You'll be ruined." She looked at me, panic flashing across her face. "You can't do this." What? Sue me for blackmail?" I cut her off again. "Maybe. But that won't change what happens to your reputation. You'll be the woman whose cheating video is all over the internet. The damage will be done. I leaned in, my voice low and steady. So, here's the deal. You sign the papers, you walk away quietly, and we both move on with our lives. Or you refuse, and I make sure everyone sees the real you. Your choice. She hesitated, her eyes darting back and forth between me and the laptop. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure a way out, but she knew there wasn't one. Not this time. She was trapped. After what felt like an eternity, she finally sighed and picked up the pen. She signed the papers, her hand shaking with every stroke. I stood there, watching as she sealed her own fate, satisfied that I'd taken control of the situation. When she was done, I grabbed the papers, gave them a quick glance, then looked at her one last time. "Now get out," I said, pointing toward the door. She didn't say another word. She just gathered her things, tears starting to form in her eyes, and left. And as the door closed behind her, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Finally, I'd gotten the revenge I needed. Finally, it was over. After everything was said and done, after she signed the papers and walked out of my life, I decided I needed a real change. Staying in that house, in that town, with all the memories and reminders of what had happened, it just wasn't going to work for me. I couldn't keep living like that, surrounded by the wreckage of my old life. So I made a decision. I sold the house, packed up everything I owned, and moved to a city several hundred kilometers away. A fresh start, somewhere far from the past. It wasn't easy. I left behind almost everyone I knew, my friends, the familiar places, even the routines that had become so normal to me. But that was the point, wasn't it? I didn't want normal anymore. Normal had turned into a nightmare, and I needed to escape from that. The first few weeks in the new city felt like freedom. It was strange, knowing that no one there knew me or my story. I didn't have to worry about running into anyone who knew what had happened, didn't have to deal with the whispers or the pitying looks. I could just exist, without the baggage of my past weighing me down. But, of course, that freedom came with a price. I was alone, and the pain of what had happened didn't just disappear because I'd moved. At first, I tried to ignore it, telling myself that it would fade with time. But it didn't. It clung to me like a shadow, always lurking in the back of my mind, refusing to let go. I started drinking more than I should have. At first, it was just a couple of beers after work to take the edge off, but it quickly became more than that. I'd find myself staring at the bottom of a bottle, wondering how I'd gotten there, wondering why the pain wouldn't just go away. I wasn't out partying or anything like that. I was just drinking alone in my new apartment, trying to drown the memories and the anger that still boiled inside me. For a while, I thought I could handle it on my own. I told myself that I just needed more time, that I'd eventually pull myself out of the hole I'd fallen into. But time didn't heal anything. If anything, it just made the wounds fester. No matter how much I tried to distract myself, the hurt was always there, eating away at me. It wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I realized I needed help. One night, after drinking way too much, I looked in the mirror and didn't even recognize the man staring back at me. I was angry, lost, and exhausted. And that's when it clicked. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I decided to find a professional. It wasn't easy for me to admit that I needed help, but I knew it was the only way I was going to get my life back on track. I found a psychologist in the city, a woman who came highly recommended, and scheduled my first appointment. I didn't know what to expect going in. I'd never been to therapy before, and part of me was skeptical that talking to a stranger could really help. But I was out of options, so I gave it a shot. Turns out, it was the best decision I could have made. The first few sessions were rough. It was hard to open up, hard to admit how broken I felt inside. But bit by bit, I started talking. I told her about the marriage, the betrayal, the divorce. I told her about how I'd tried to move on, but couldn't. About the drinking, the isolation, the overwhelming sense that my life had completely fallen apart. She didn't judge. She just listened, and then slowly, she helped me piece things back together. We talked about the anger, the guilt, the shame. She helped me see that what had happened wasn't my fault, that I hadn't failed, even if it felt like everything around me had collapsed. It took time, but session by session, I started to feel like I could breathe again. I began to let go of the bitterness, the resentment. I started to rebuild, not just my life, but myself. She gave me tools to deal with the emotions I'd buried for so long, and little by little, I learned how to manage the pain without drowning it in alcohol. It wasn't an overnight fix, but eventually, I started feeling like myself again. And for the first time in a long time, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could actually move on. Update. Hey everyone, I figured it was time for an update. It's been a while since I last shared anything, and things have changed quite a bit since then. First off, I've really settled into my new home. Moving to a different city, far away from all the chaos, turned out to be one of the best decisions I've made. This place is nothing like where I used to live. It's quieter, more peaceful. I don't wake up with that knot in my stomach anymore, and I don't have to worry about running into anyone who knows the old story. I needed that distance, both physically and mentally. The fresh start has helped me clear my head and get back to some sense of normalcy. Psychologically, I'm in a much better place. It took a lot of work to get here, though. For a while, I was pretty messed up. There were nights I'd just sit there with a bottle, trying to drown out the memories, trying to forget everything that happened. I won't sugarcoat it, it wasn't pretty. But eventually, I realized I couldn't keep living like that. The drinking wasn't helping, it was just numbing the pain temporarily and making things worse the next day. That's when I reached out to a psychologist. I wasn't sure about therapy at first, but looking back, it's probably the smartest move I made. The first few sessions were tough. I didn't want to open up, didn't want to admit how broken I was feeling inside. But little by little, talking things through with someone who didn't judge me, who helped me make sense of all the emotions I'd been bottling up, it started to work. She helped me unpack all the anger, the hurt, and the betrayal, and helped me see that what happened wasn't entirely my fault, even though it felt like it was. Now, I'm feeling more like myself again. I'm not perfect, but I'm moving forward, and that's what matters. As for relationships, honestly, I don't want anything to do with them right now. I've had enough for a lifetime, it feels like. Jumping into something new? No, thanks. The thought of trusting someone again, of opening myself up to that kind of vulnerability after everything that happened with Lisa, is just too much. I don't think I'm ready. I probably won't be for a few years, if ever. For now, I'm focusing on myself, working on healing, getting stronger, and rebuilding my life one piece at a time. There's no rush. I've learned that. Now, about Lisa, well, I've heard through the grapevine that things haven't exactly been going great for her. Some of my old friends from back home still keep me in the loop, even though I don't talk to most of them much anymore. From what they've told me, she's struggling pretty hard. Her new relationship, or whatever that was, crashed and burned not long after the divorce. Apparently, she's been bouncing around, not finding any solid ground. She's not doing as well as she probably thought she would. Am I happy about it? I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel some satisfaction. After everything she put me through, after the lies, the betrayal, the games, yeah, there's a part of me that's glad to hear she's not exactly living her best life. It's not like I'm actively rooting for her downfall, but karma's a bitch, right? She made her bed, and now she's lying in it. I know it sounds cold, but honestly, after what I've been through, I think I've earned the right to feel that way. So yeah, I guess I am happy about it. Maybe that makes me a little petty, but I'm okay with that. Anyway, that's where I'm at right now. I'm in a better place, and I feel like I'm finally on the other side of all the drama and pain. It took a lot of time, a lot of hard work, and a lot of soul-searching, but I'm getting there. I want to thank everyone who's been following along with my story, offering support, advice, and just listening. It's meant more to me than I can say. Let me know what you think, how everything turned out, where things are headed. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.